The book of Judges tells a story about a rapidly deteriorating society. A story and a society with a perpetual downward spiral. The spiral goes like this. 1, the Israelites commit apostasy. They betray God by worshiping other gods. 2, a foreign power rules over them, and they experience oppression. 3, the people cry out to God for help. And 4, God sends a judge for their rescue. Things get so bad throughout the book of Judges that even this cycle breaks down toward the end of the book. There are no judges sent for rescue. The people stop crying out to God, and the Israelites become their own tyrannical, violent rulers. But we're not quite there yet, here at the beginning of Judges. When we meet Deborah, the cycle is going strong. Just in the first few verses, we see it. The Israelites again did what was evil in the sight of the Lord. Apostasy, betrayal. So the Lord sold them into the hand of King Jabin of Canaan, who reigned in Hazor. He had 900 chariots of iron and had oppressed the Israelites cruelly 20 years. Oppression. Then the Israelites cried out to the Lord for help, right? They cried out to God. At that time, Deborah, a prophet, wife of Lapidoth, was judging Israel. God raises up a judge to save them. Deborah seems to us to be God's answer to the Israelites in their oppression, a rescuer of sorts. At least this is how the story reads. Deborah is the savior in this scenario, a little Christ, someone who rescues in a particular scenario. I mean, not the savior of the whole world, but a particular savior, a rescuer. She is cast in the story in the role of a rescuer, a savior, in our story for today. But just after she is cast in this role, she is unlike what we think of when we think of saviors. The author tells us that she sits at a palm tree between Bethel and Ramah. Why a palm tree? Rabbis have wondered about this question, particularly about this tree, for many generations. They agree that it is probably a date tree, which looks much like a palm tree that we might think of. There is a trunk of the tree, and at the top of the trunk there is what looks like a heart where the dates grow, and then palms that are out just like the palm tree we imagine. Many rabbis say that she sits at the date tree rather than a tree like an oak, because the date tree doesn't give off much shade. And things are going so poorly in Israel at this time, the people are so committed to their apostasy that only those who are wise are shaded by the tree. Only Deborah. These rabbis say she is the only true student, the only true teacher of Jewish law left in all of Israel, there under the date tree. Other rabbis say that the date tree has long symbolized the people Israel, their roots in creation. They have a common heart, and their arms are open and facing God. It seems Deborah is not only the sole student or teacher of Torah in a legal or academic sense, she's also the only one with wisdom, with the right posture toward God and the world. Deborah sits at a tree between Bethel and Ramah. Bethel means house of God. It's where Jacob slept and dreamt of the angels going up and down on a ladder between earth and heaven. And since the time of Jacob, it has become a site of worship, a place where people go to meet with God. Bethel is a religious site. Ramah, on the other hand, is a military stronghold, a site signifying political and military power. So Deborah sits at a tree between Bethel and Ramah, between religious power and political and military power. Deborah is clearly religious in that she knows Torah so well. She knows the law so well that she is the only one who can justly settle disputes for her neighbors. But it becomes clear that she has strategic military prowess as well, as Barak, the military leader, seems to need her wisdom for his next moves against their oppressors. She is familiar with both the religious and military institutions. She is savvy in both of them. Deborah is alone here at the tree, symbolizing the failure of the religious institution to teach people Torah. And she has to go to Barak, to go find him, to go give him wisdom on what to do next. And more than that, he is so afraid of doing what God has told him to do through Deborah, he says he won't go without her. The military institution is failing too. Deborah, sitting at her tree between Bethel and Ramah, is witnessing an apocalypse. Sitting at her tree, she is witnessing the end of something, the end of an era, to be sure. But how significant of an ending is it going to be? Is she witnessing the end of her people? The end of Israelite faith and worship? The end of hope for sovereignty for her nation? From my tree, where I sit, between Bethel and Ramah, things look apocalyptic to me too. We are witnessing, I think, an apocalypse. I don't mean the end of time forever, but I mean the end of something. We are witnessing a little apocalypse. When I look to Bethel, to religious institutions from my own tradition, when I look to our denomination or look at mainline Christianity as a whole, I see fracture and discrimination and an unclear identity and expressions of Christian nationalism. When I look at our military, social, and political institutions, I see the rise of fascism, compromise on human rights, an inadequate social safety net. I've known so much war in my life. We're coming to the end of something. We are witnessing a little apocalypse, though to me, at least, it feels really big. So as people who are witnessing an apocalypse, as our country and our church come to an end of one way of being, and hopefully we will find ourselves on the other side of it made new somehow, what is our responsibility as people of faith? We might be tempted to think that our role is to be a savior. We might think that our role is to be a little Christ. That's what Christian means, after all. And that we are to find a way to rescue. But Deborah, as a face of our faith, shows us a different way. She is not the hero of the story, as we expect her to be at the beginning. She is not the rescuer, the savior. Instead, she plays the role of a wise sage. She chooses to sit under a tree, to watch things crumble around her, and discern where she can skillfully and precisely intervene to make a difference. And here's how she does it. Deborah remains knowledgeable about the systems that are failing, but she keeps enough distance not to become entangled in them. She finds a place apart from and between the two. She studies her scriptures, she listens to God, and becomes wise. She sinks her roots into the wisdom found in her holy book, keeps her heart in solidarity with all the people of God, and she keeps her arms open, facing God to listen for where God is leading. We think that Deborah will be the hero when she goes with Barak into battle. She foretells, after all, that the enemy will be given into the hands of a woman, and we think it's going to be her. But instead, another woman, Jael, welcomes the enemy into her tent. She provides all kind of warm, motherly hospitality to him. Leading to his demise, he underestimates the woman in front of him, thinking she is only soft, only nurturing, safe. He falls asleep, and she gets wise. Sitting in a tent between her neighbor's oppressor and a tent peg, representing her neighbor's freedom, her inner wisdom discerned that assassinating the oppressor was the good and right choice. Now, there's a reason, as you can imagine, that JL is not part of this Faces of Our Faith series. It's complicated to hold up someone who kills someone else as someone to emulate. But Deborah calls JL most blessed of women in the song that she sings in just the next chapter. JL was the rescuer, the savior. JL happened to be in the right place at the right time to completely change the reality of her neighbors. But Deborah was the wise one, the one who had been watching the apocalypse. We too are watching an apocalypse. There is plague and famine and suffering and mourning and crying and pain. And Deborah shows us that as watchers of an apocalypse, the thing to do is to sit by a tree and get wise. As the cyclones of crumbling institutions threaten to pick us up and spin us around, we are called to be wise ones, to remove ourselves from the chaos, get to a place where we feel in tune with nature, where we can still be familiar and in solidarity with the suffering of our neighbors within those crumbling and chaotic institutions, and open our arms to God, to listen to what God might have to say. The book of Judges ends in genocide and sex trafficking. The people are not saved from all of their suffering by Deborah holding this posture, by her intervention. We will not prevent all of the suffering yet to come, but we are not without instruction on what to do and how to be in the apocalypse, in the chaos. So place your feet on the ground, sink your roots into the wisdom of your foundations. Set your heart to be in solidarity with all the children of God, and open your arms to the heavens, listening for God's voice. Most of us will not be saviors, but all of us can become wise. Amen.